Good afternoon or good evening, everybody, depending upon where you are in the world. This is Patrick from the Poison Pen Bookstore, and we're here with another of our virtual events this afternoon. And today, from a cottage at the end of No Name Lane, somewhere in the Devon countryside, Alice Feeney joins us. She's going to be discussing her brand new book, Rock, Paper, Scissors. And we have copies in stock, and Alice has signed these very cool little book plates here and stamped them. So if you purchase a copy from us, you'll get one of these. And I will go ahead and put a buy link in the comments field. And if you have questions throughout the hour as they occur to you, go ahead and put them in the comments field. And I'll reemerge when Barbara summons me to ask any questions you might have for Alice. So Barbara, I'll turn it over to you for now.
Thank you very much, Patrick. Alice, what a pleasure to see you. I'll salute you with a cup of tea because it's only noon here, even though you could be drinking something better.
It's so lovely to be back. I enjoyed our chat so much last year. I can't believe a whole year has gone by since we've been talking about books.
It has been remarkably quick, the way that time has passed in the pandemic. In one way, it seems never to move, and in other ways, the days just seem to fly by.
I feel like I can't tell time anymore. And
no,
the fact that it's September is baffling to me.
I agree. And, Zoom is wonderful, but time zones throw everybody. And then Facebook has this weird thing where they keep correcting Arizona time because we stay on Mountain Standard Time, but basically it's Pacific Daylight Time, but they keep insisting it's Mountain Standard Time. So everybody is constantly emailing us and saying, when is it really happening? And you can't talk to a real person at Facebook to fix anything, right?
I guess it's happening now.
It is happening now. And Alice, just to add to the excitement, has just moved into a new, or actually an old, thatched cottage somewhere in Devon at the end of No Name Lane, as Patrick has said. And internet is only available to you in one room in the cottage?
In this one room. So it's a 16th century thatched cottage. It's absolutely beautiful and I'm completely in love with it. But this is the only room currently where we have internet because the walls are really this thick. And the oldest part of the house is 13th century. And the walls are all made of cob. I don't know if you have, cob is I think a very Devon thing,
yeah.
Which basically, long story short, means that the walls of the house are made of straw and mud. And you might think, why would she buy a house made of straw and mud? And the answer is because I just fell in love with it and it's really beautiful. And I love the history of it. And I think there are probably a lot of stories in these very old walls. So bits of it might be crumbling down, but I love a fixer-upper. So I'm settling in and it feels very much like home already.
Well, I'm delighted for you. And I will tell you that there actually has been a new building technology here in the US, which involves bales of hay rather than just the straw. So it's a version of cob. We also have adobe houses, which is just mud brick that's dried and stacked up more in New Mexico, certainly than Arizona. But there really has been a trend towards some of the older building techniques. Again.
I think they knew what they were doing. And, if it's been standing since the 16th century, it'll still be here long after I'm gone. So I'm happy to take the risk. It feels like a really lovely place to live.
Well, we're talking about housing, and that's going to be an important part of our discussion of rock, scissors, paper, because there is an unusual Scottish accommodation that comes into play. But before we do that, let me just say that Rock, Paper, Scissors is Alice's fourth novel. Her first one, Sometimes I Lie, was an international bestseller, translated into more than 20 languages, and has been being made into a TV series starring Sarah Michelle Gellar. That's so great. And then His or Hers is also being adapted for screen by Jessica Chastain's Freckle Films. So two film things in the works, Alice. That's really exciting.
Yeah, and I'm crazy lucky because Rock, Paper, Scissors is now being adapted by Netflix and by the producer of The Crown. I still feel as though I'm making this up when I say it because it seems too good to be true. But it really is a dream come true. They're an amazing team. So I'm very excited that plans are already underway and scripts are already being written, and hopefully people will be kind enough to read the book first, but then not too far in the future, they'll be able to see the TV adaptation of the latest one too.
Well, I do think that long form storytelling on streaming television has been an absolute godsend for authors and for readers. And certainly a book as complicated as in plotting as yours are, you really can't do it justice in a very short movie. So it's great that they are, taking this over. Do you think your former career as a BBC journalist helped you? Did you have connections, or do people have confidence in, in the success of the books in an adaptation? Did it make any difference?
I think there are a couple of things that might have led to this. Luck, I think, definitely plays a really big part. I'll never say it isn't something to do with luck. I watched a lot of TV as a child, and I read a lot of books. And I was always being warned by my nana that my eyes were going to turn square, which so far they haven't, even though I still watch quite a bit of TV now. So I think that has something to do with it. I've always been obsessed with stories, whether it's with books or TV shows or films. And then really amazing agents. I get to work with the best in the business in terms of my agents and my publishers. And I think that all just has helped make people maybe see the book, and hope very kindly be interested in the book and want to adapt it for television. So luck, watching lots of television, and very good agents.
It's also true that if you get one book made successfully, then it's fairly easy to get the rest of the books made. You can look at Leanne Moriarty, for example. But I was thinking about Anne Cleeves. Vera did so well, and Shetland's done so well, and now she has a series set in Devon. Maybe you can do a cameo or a walk-on part. But the Devon series is also going to be turned into television, and it has an interesting sleuth. He's gay. And he and his husband live in whatever community it is in Devon. So I think Anne's books, she has really great leads, but I also think that the setting for her books are so powerful. Vera, you've got Northumberland, and with Jimmy Perez, you've got Shetland, and now with Matthew, you're in Devon. So do you feel that rooting your books in a particular landscape is an advantage?
I think it's always interesting for readers and for viewers to take a trip somewhere else. We're all looking for a little bit of escapism, whether we're reading a book or watching a TV show, or we go to watch a film. And so it's nice to live in someone else's shoes and to see the world through their eyes, for a little while. So I think different settings are great. And I think what is also so wonderful is that all the shows you're talking about, I've seen them and I love them. And I've still got a huge appetite to see more of them. And I think that there are a lot of people out there who do. So we all seem to like these whodunit shows or these crime shows, and a little bit of mystery and some puzzle solving. So hopefully it's a habit that we'll all carry on with for a little while longer at least, and something we can all continue to enjoy.
Well, I think we will. I mean, we're the Outlander bookstore, so nobody has to talk to us about what happens with television adaptation. But a huge part of the remarkable international success of Outlander are the locations. For Scotland, well, actually, Scotland, we've been France, with South Africa, and then basically the Carolinas in the United States. And in all of them, that background is, I mean, they're not crime novels, but then there are crimes that happen in every episode. So what is a crime novel if you really think about it? But I know that people are so drawn to the landscape. And speaking of Scotland, you decided in rock, paper, scissors that you would send this couple on a trip to Scotland. Why don't you tell us the setup, and when they arrive, what is the surprise that greets them?
So when I first had the idea for this book, it was 2018, and my husband and I were taking a trip up to the Scottish Highlands, and I am completely in love with Scotland. I talk about it a lot, probably bore people to tears about it, but I just think it's just such a beautiful, beautiful place, and I feel so lucky that we can jump in the car and drive there. It takes a very long time to get there, but it's possible. So we've been going up there for the last few years. All of my books have either been partly written or edited there. And on this particular trip, it was 2018, and there was this terrible storm here called the Beast from the East. And everybody said, you mustn't go, you mustn't drive, it's not safe. But I was determined to go, I really wanted to go. And so we drove up. The roads were icy and slippy. There weren't many other cars on the roads because nobody was as crazy as us. And when we eventually got there, several hours later than we should have done, because of the conditions, it was dark. The house we'd rented for our stay, there were no lights. The pipes were frozen, so there was no water. We realized pretty quickly that the car was snowed in, so we couldn't leave. And as we settled in for the night, we realized we were a little bit stuck. And then just before we were about to go to bed, a face appeared outside the window, and this was very late at night. And I was terrified because our phones didn't work. We were in the middle of a valley. There were no neighbors except for some sheep. And that moment definitely was a bit of a trigger for the idea behind rock, paper, scissors. So in real life, what happened to us was that it was just a very friendly caretaker who was so worried about us making this journey, they could come out to see if we were okay, if we'd even managed to get into the property. But in my dark and twisty imagination, I had the seed of an idea for this couple who went away for on a trip to Scotland, and there was a face in the window. But in the book, things are obviously things get a lot more dark and twisty for their experience. Mine was fine. I lived to tell the tale. It was all good. But yes, it definitely sparked the idea. And then a year later, we went back to Scotland. We always go in March because it's my dog's birthday and it's his favourite place to go. He told me that in dog language. So we always go to Scotland in March, and we were staying in a converted chapel. And I woke up in the middle of the night, and it was a lovely place. It was a smidgen creepy. And this whole idea that I had been thinking about for a whole year by then all slotted into place. And I knew the story. I'd been thinking about these characters for a year. It all just happened and slotted into where it needed to be. And I just knew that this was a story I had to tell in a book that I had to write.
Well, when they arrive, in fact, what the husband thinks is going to be a sort of standard accommodation is in fact a chapel. And I do, I've seen the Wall Street Journal does a feature on mansions on Friday, and on Sunday, the New York Times business section will do something like, if you have X amount of money, here's what you can buy. And very often, especially in the New York Times one, it's a converted church or something. I assume they have to be, whatever the word, desanctified or whatever. There has to be some sort of decommissioned, maybe it is. But, when traveling in Ireland and other countries where churches are really not used as they used to be. They used to be not just places of religious devotion, but really community centers. Certainly in England, they were also the record keepers. That's where the births and marriages and everything were recorded. But now lots of these buildings are just sitting empty, deteriorating. So it does seem to be, it's like lighthouses. I think lighthouses also, haven't they begun, a lot of them been turned into B&Bs or some kind of accommodation. So what fun.
Yeah, I might write about a lighthouse next. Only kidding, I'm not going to.
Well, I mean, I think staying in a lighthouse would be really cool, except for the fact that, I'm not sure that I want to do all that climbing as I'm getting older and my knees are not what they once were. Lighthouses would present some serious challenge, but a church, you've got a natural loft. If you have the organ, you can put, bedding upstairs. Usually there was already a kitchen facility for some, serving the parishioners. So anyway, so they go through the same kind of fiendish conditions to get there. And you can tell from the dialogue between the husband and the wife, she's driving, isn't she?
Yes. Yeah. So Amelia's driving. Adam's just a passenger in the car. Adam doesn't really understand why we're going all the way to Scotland for a weekend away. It's a very long way to drive. And I think you can tell from the beginning that this is not a happy marriage. There are problems here. And it takes us a while to try and understand, while we're reading the book, what's really going on and what's really happened in this marriage and who are these two people. Because on the surface, they might seem like very lovely people and everything should be fine with their relationship, but there's something just below the surface that isn't quite right.
So you adopt an interesting technique to kind of give us an extra voice or an extra perspective. What interested you in doing that?
I guess I like to try and write books that I would like to read, and I really enjoy all genres, but I'm especially fond of twisty, turny books. I like a story that can catch me out. And if I'm honest, I read so many thrillers these days, it's quite rare that I don't spot a twist. I can normally sometimes see what an author is doing, which ruins it. It ruins it for me. So when I find a book where I don't guess the twist, it's such a thrill. I love that. So that's what I'm always trying to achieve. I always want to try and take the reader on a kind of roller coaster ride with me, and we'll have some twists and turns. We might turn upside down once or twice. I might put you in the dark a little bit, but by the end, hopefully we will have all had a good time together and enjoyed the ride. And this particular way of structuring this novel felt like the best way for me to tell this story. I am rather fond of unreliable narrators, and this was the way that I wanted them to express their present and also their past. And I felt like with this story, it was so important that you understood the past of these characters in order to understand why they have become the people they are now.
Well, it certainly is key. If you want to create this kind of a book, you don't want to give away their whole life story up front. You want to leak it in so the reader is constantly going, but why? Why? And so if you've got, it does require multiple points of view to do it this way. And I do think I've edited books where journals or letters are a way for somebody to speak. In some other fiction, I've read some rom-coms and so forth, where increasingly text messaging or emails, or even email addresses or little email headers and so forth can tell you a lot about what's going on. So why did the letter interest you?
I remember that when we were in this converted chapel in Scotland, I was thinking about our 10-year wedding anniversary, which was coming up. And my husband always buys these really thoughtful, amazing anniversary gifts. And there was one year where it was our tin anniversary, and we were both crazy busy. And he said, look, let's just agree not to do gifts. And then he got me a really lovely gift, and I'd given him a tin of baked beans as a joke, and I felt awful. So I was thinking about all of this, and I was thinking, what am I going to get this year so that I win the battle of who buys the most caring, thoughtful gift. And I think because I was thinking about that at the same time as the book happened in my head, I thought, wouldn't it be brilliant to look back in time at a couple's anniversary every year, every wedding anniversary, and see what state was the marriage in then, who was happy, who was sad, who was having a good time in their career, who was feeling unloved, who was feeling insecure, what little things happened. And I really wanted to demonstrate as well that with a marriage or any relationship, there are constantly ups and downs. You don't just have this year is great, next year is even better. You can have a great year, and then you might have a year where things go wrong for various different reasons, maybe external reasons, maybe internal reasons. But I really loved the idea of doing that. And I really wanted these little illustrations at the beginning of each chapter. And I did these very crude illustrations for my first draft, which I sent off to my agent and my publishers. And I remember thinking, there's no way they're going to let me keep these in the book. There's no way. It's a thriller. You don't have illustrations on all the chapters. And because my publishers are just the best people in the universe, they said yes. And we had this amazing artist who did much better drawings than the ones that I had put into my my first draft of the book. And it was just so lovely to see. It was so lovely to see the book come together, how it had in my slightly dark and bonkers brain. And so I was really happy with the finished result. But back to your question, because I started talking about drawings now, I really liked the idea of showing this marriage once a year, every year. Where are we at? And how did we get from this happy, yay, let's get together, engaged couple, to where we are now in this slightly dark and creepy chapel in Scotland?
And you can use whatever the anniversary marker is, as paper or whatever. You just revealed to me, this is so annoying. Advanced reading copies don't come.
Oh, it doesn't
with
have
illustrations. So only now,
no.
do I know that Alice had cool illustrations in the book. I'll have to
Hold on, look.
Oh, look.
Like there's see the black dog?
I do.
See, you love black dogs too. Let me find another one. And for Robin's chapters, hold on, there are robins. Can you see?
I can't see.
Yeah. So and then every anniversary, there would be a little thing like leather has a little leather satchel.
Right.
And there's one chapter in there which is copper, and I'm gonna share with you because it sounds like I've borrowed all these very private things from my own marriage to put in the book, and I promise I haven't. I just stole a couple and I asked my husband for permission first. But when it came to copper, I did borrow our gift, and I'm going to show you in the book. You'll see there's a smiley penny, and that's because in that chapter they exchange gifts, and basically Adam gives his wife 7 copper pennies, and each penny will have one of the years that they've been together to demonstrate it. And look, here is the one in real life.
Oh, how beautiful.
This came from. And so this was a few years ago now for us, but I used to work at the BBC, as you said. I was a BBC producer and journalist, and I was hunting everywhere to find the right penny with the right year to give to my husband for our 7-year copper wedding anniversary. And I remember going to the BBC canteen and begging them, could you look in the tills to find this particular year and this particular year? These are the only ones I'm missing. And this big queue of angry, hungry journalists behind me all wanting to pay for their various chips and burger lunches and all these things they were having. But the people in the canteen were just so brilliant. They stopped everything and they got out all the tills and they found me all the coins and I could make my gift. But that was one which I borrowed. So in the book, it's Adam who gives it to his wife. But in real life, I gave that to my husband. So yes.
It's a wonderful story. Now, for those of you listening or watching who are wondering what I'm talking about, what happens with booksellers and reviewers is that we get often, well, for a long time in the pandemic, we didn't get them at all. And it was a real problem. I used to get a PDF and then I'd have to print it out and read manuscript pages. But in any case, publishers manufacture advanced reading copies that are just like big paperbacks, so they can send them out some months earlier than the actual publication. But oftentimes the result is that the artwork, like Alice's, doesn't make it into the advanced reading copy because it's not ready. I have to say that the worst one, I don't know if you ever read Colin Dexter, but his Inspector Morse series that, was from marvelous television, John Thaw and all, was great. But a secret all the way through until the, I think, penultimate book was what was Morse's Christian name? What was his given name? He was just known as Morse. So it was a huge deal. And Colin promised to reveal it in the book, and everybody was all excited. When they sent out the advanced reading copies, they didn't edit it out. So all of us who had them already knew. And, and they didn't caution people, not to say. So the whole impact of revealing, I'm trying to remember what it was. It'll come back to me, what his actual name was. But, it was one of those things where the system spoiled the surprise. And, and occasionally there have been wonderful moments when it happened to Val McDermott when they sent out an advanced reading copy, but unfortunately, it was like a whole chapter was omitted or something. And so there was, stuff goes wrong, right?
This is a nice surprise because in the final version, you get all the special artwork. So it's like a nice added extra that happened a little bit further down the line, because you're right, those early reader copies, they go out super early.
So, the message for me is that I should really go down to the store. I'm working at home right now and actually look at the physical book, because I am depending most of the time on the copy that I had at home. And often I don't even see the physical book. So clearly I'm missing some really important stuff.
You can see all the lovely artwork, which is not me. I wish I could draw like that. It's down to the 2 beautiful artists who did a really amazing job of the cover and inside. I'm thrilled to bits with how the book looks.
So did you have to consult like a reference source to work out what all of the anniversaries are? Or is the fact that you and your husband have been so good about marking them that you already knew what year
I knew most of them. And yeah, I knew most of them. And they're interestingly enough, they're different in America. So UK has its own set of traditional anniversary gifts, and America has slightly different ones. So I went UK because I live in the UK, and that just seemed more logical to me, and I'd get in muddled about which year was which if I tried to change things up too much. So yes, I found that interesting. And as I was writing the book and coming up with these traditional gifts that the couple would exchange every year, I'd sort of look back with a little bit of remorse, thinking, oh, I could have done that year if I'd thought about it as much as I'm thinking about my books now. So no, it was really good fun in that way, and hopefully some readers will think, hey, that's a good idea for an anniversary gift. Or I'm sure lots of readers out there probably have much better anniversary gifts than I can come up with too.
Well, no, but I think you may have revived interest. That might be one of those kind of old traditions that's largely fallen into abeyance. I'm embarrassed to say I don't know that I've ever given my husband the right. I mean, we're going to be married 31 years in December. I'm going to have to look up and see what's the 31st anniversary. And then he will just look at it in some puzzlement, unless I deliver it with an explanation and say whatever it is. But I think it's really a lovely idea.
Like paper, which is paper crane gift in the book, which Adam had exactly the same reaction. He just looked at it and went, "What's this?
Right?
How does this mean? How does this mean that you love me?" But we all demonstrate our love in different ways.
So in your title, rock, paper, scissors, which applies? Which applies to the gift thing? To all of them? I know.
Oh, all of
does.
them. So for rock, it's the year that they get engaged. So I used the idea of the engagement ring and the rock on the engagement ring. Paper was the paper crane, which is their first year anniversary. And scissors, well, I don't want to do any spoilers, but scissors comes towards the end of the book.
Got it. I mean, isn't there a game also called rock, paper?
Rock, paper. Have you never played rock, paper?
Yeah,
scissors?
no, I have. I remember it as a kid,
Well, come on, we have to play now because you've mentioned it now. So I'm going to remind you. So you have to do 1, 2, 3. So you do 1, 2, 3, and then you do the thing you're going to do. So you can either do rock,
right,
or paper, or scissors. And make sure you do like that, or it looks like we're being rude to each other. Okay, so you ready? We're going to do 1, 2, 3, yeah?
Okay.
So 1, 2, 3. Both scissors, which means it's a tie. Do you want to do should we do best of 3?
Okay, well, we can try again.
Okay. 1, 2, 3. Oh, both paper. Well, we're just so in sync, Barbara, you and me.
Well, I'm sorry. No, I do remember playing it. It was one of those great things, like on road trips, when your parents were always trying to find things to amuse you in the back seat of the car, that rock, paper, scissors was always.
Or I Spy, or one of those things on those long journeys. Yeah.
Right. And you know what I miss are the old road signs. So we used to have companies like Gillette who made razor blades, and they would take a track. I mean, we're not talking interstates. We're talking, back when they were older country roads, and they would have like jingles or something, and they would give you a line on one bulletin board and then the next one and the next one. So as you drove by it, you could put them together. Interstate, these big highways that we have in America really spoiled a lot of stuff like that. It becomes much harder to spot things. And
we used to count the different colored cars. So you'd pick a color and it'd be red or green or blue. And whoever got to 50 of those colored cars first was the winner. I don't know why I'm sharing this with you.
Oh, no, I think it's, you can do license plates. You can do, the kinds of cars, for example, taking it to a different level. My husband is very fond of Volvos. I have a Mercedes. My husband loves Volvos. And as we're watching all the streaming television from all over the world, mostly on MHC TV, but on Netflix and other things, every time there's a Volvo, wherever it is, France, Finland, whatever, Rob goes, Volvo. It's like the old Andy Griffith show where they used to sit on the front porch of this little southern town, and they would call the cars as they went by. It was like a count, Ford, Chevrolet, whatever it is. So,
next time I see a Volvo in a TV show now, I'm going to have to shout Volvo.
You will. I know.
Yeah.
And he's not, I'm not even keeping tab on the Mercedes. It's not even a contest. I don't know quite what's going on. So where does your couple originate? I mean, they're taking this icy, perilous journey to Scotland to check into the dark chapel. But where did they begin this trip?
So they live in London, and Adam is a screenwriter, and it was really fun to write a writer. He doesn't write novels. Adam would not touch writing novels. He wouldn't be interested in doing that at all. But he writes screenplays, and they live in London in this in this old house that they have lovingly restored, bit by bit, slowly. And Amelia works for Battersea Dogs Home, which is a really very famous animal shelter in the UK. And I really love that that's what she does for her job. And I really love what the way that we sometimes judge people from their jobs. We judge them from their names, we judge them from their accents, and we're all guilty of sometimes judging people on these first impressions. And what I really wanted with this book was for people to start the book perhaps with one impression of these two individuals. And then as the book carries on, chapter after chapter, you start to change your mind, I would hope, about who they are and what their motivations are, and whether you think they're good or bad, which is all very subjective anyway. But yes, so no, they've started this journey from London, and I felt that was really important in so many ways, but also because I wanted to have that contrast between the claustrophobic feelings you can have if you live in a city like London. It's so busy, there are so many people, everything is so fast. Sometimes you just feel like the walls are coming in on you. With the contrast of the Scottish Highlands, which are so open, and you can just breathe, and you can see so much further into the distance, and you can see this vast, amazing, beautiful landscape, and it can remind you that we're all in fact quite small in this big old world of ours. So that felt important in terms of reflecting their marriage in some ways as well, and the way that a marriage can feel like that. Sometimes it can feel very claustrophobic, and sometimes it can feel as though you're very alone in this big open space, and you can't see anybody else or see any kind of way out, if you like.
I do think, as you pointed out, it's a very long drive for them. And I was once in England back in I can't remember, early part of the century, in Manchester at Val McDermott's, and there was such a blizzard that transportation stopped everywhere. The rail lines froze, and the trains couldn't operate. I can't remember, there's something about expansion and contraction because they're very old, and that didn't work. The motorways were completely closed. We can't cope with
weather at all in this country. We're not prepared for weather at all. I don't really know why. The weather is the same every year, but even when I was a child, I can remember once you get a little bit of snow in this country, everything grinds to a halt. Shops are closed, everything just stops. There's no trains.
Airport closed, motorway closed, railroads didn't function. So we were marooned in Manchester. And one of the really good things about being marooned is that you can't really do anything about it. There you are. And so time kind of disappears. And it's almost like this welcome little bubble in your life where you're not responsible for doing things because you can't get there to do them. The other thing that's hard for us as Americans to recognize, for example, is that the entire British Isle will fit into Arizona, and we can drive at amazing speeds. So, from London to Scotland for us would be, a really relatively quick journey. But it doesn't work that way. I think one reason Americans like British crime novels is that the scale of them is smaller, it's more intimate. And traveling in Europe and in the UK, which I have done an awful lot of, you recognize that the journey takes the same amount of time, even if the geographical distance is very small, because of the congestion, because of the landscape. The roads are small. If you've ever driven in Cornwall, you will understand what I mean. I actually understand why there are so many motor accidents in England when you see people bucketing along on these, almost completely blind roads with hedgerows or walls. So there's no forgiveness, there's no verge, whatever. And, you guys I've always been astonished at how kind of, what's the word I want? Insouciant, drivers can be whipping around turns and the whole bit. Wow.
Not me though. I poodle along. I'm a very safe driver. I always am just under the speed limit, and I take my time, except for when I was writing one novel where I was writing a very angry character. And just for that period, when I was writing the first draft, maybe 3 months or so, I had road rage for the first time ever, because I was living inside the head of an angry driver. And it was so fascinating because I didn't even know where the horn was on my car. I'd never used it before. And I was driving, and then I hooted the horn. And I got home and I thought, I've got to stop writing this book because I prefer being me, driver, poodle, poodle, poodle. Oh no, after you, it's all fine. So it is interesting how writing some of these characters sometimes rubs off on you in quite a scary way, but I'm pleased to say I'm back being me again and driving nice and slowly.
Well, if you worked for the BBC, you must have been located in London or some urban area. Now you're kind of in remote Devon. So, has that been,
Yes.
how easy is it for you to adjust to that?
It's wonderful. I've been secretly dreaming of doing this for such a long time, since forever really. My Irish grandmother lived in a property not too unlike this, and I think it was one of the happiest places I had as a child, somewhere that I always felt at home. So I think I've been desperate to recreate this very old sort of farmhouse cottage with a little bit of land and a little stream, and to be able to do it really is a dream come true. I feel incredibly lucky. But living in London, we live just outside London. I did enjoy that too. I did enjoy that. There was a period in my life where I was quite happy to do all of that and I loved my job. But I think I've had this secret notion of being this author who goes to live far, far away down a lane that doesn't even have a name. I love that that's a reality now. And that there's a character in Rock, Paper, Scissors who is an author who has deliberately gone to live far, far away. So it's as though I was writing this sort of strange fantasy of an author who gets to go and live away from all the chaos and the noise and just be alone with their books. And now I'm doing it, but I hope I won't end up too much like Henry Winter.
Interestingly enough, in the last year or so, there's been a remarkable number of novels, crime novels, in which an author turns out to be the central character, either the protagonist or, the sleuth, or depending on what structure of the book it is. So writers have been writing.
Maybe it's the pandemic, because we've all been trapped at home with ourselves.
Maybe.
We haven't been allowed out to see or talk to anyone else or experience anything else. We've all been looking maybe a little bit.
It's really interesting. And, the frustrations that Adam is experiencing as a screenwriter who is not as successful or is not going as well as he would have liked. I think writers can write well about the frustrations of other writers. Either you never get recognized or you had a big success and then you can't get back to it, or you just run out of ideas or various things. So
I've had a lot of authors who've been incredibly kind about this book, who read early copies like you did, but they've been taking screen grabs of some of the things that Adam says about writing and then sharing them on social media going, yes, I think this too. And I don't agree with everything that Adam says or thinks or feels in the book, definitely not by a long stretch actually, but there are definitely some things in there, little nuggets that he has, which I think probably all writers have experienced and felt at one point or another.
Well, I think that readers are fascinated. We've always found that readers are interested in the whole creative process, down to whether you write on, with a pen or whether you write on a laptop, or the hours that you write and all. None of that's transferable from one writer to another, but it always comes up as kind of an effort, to penetrate the process. So we've talked about Adam, and let's go back to the working at the animal shelter, because you and I have black dogs. Patrick, in fact, is going to show us a photo, the only decent photo of my black dog, because she's so black, her face just disappears in any kind of a photo. Patrick, do you have the photo I sent you? Or?
I do. Just a second. Let me just get it all queued up.
Okay, sorry, I probably caught you by surprise. But Alice, tell us about your black dog while Patrick.
I feel like we need a little drum roll, because I can't wait to see this dog too. My black dog is this 8-year-old giant black Labrador who might ring bells because there is a black Labrador in this book. And I was so happy with the illustrations because one of them is of a black Labrador. So I feel like he's found fame, but he hasn't let it go to his head yet.
Well, a black dog is kind of a, fabulous thing. There.
Look at that.
This is an 11-week-old puppy. And what's interesting about her is that there's actually not even a white of her eye. And so to take her photo, most of the time she's faceless, but she has this little tiny white ruff that you can see underneath. And I managed to get her to look up in such a way that I could, but this is the only recorded record of her face, because in everything else, she looks as though she's wearing a complete mask. Poor puppy.
Gorgeous, gorgeous.
She is, and her brother, unfortunately for her, is stunningly photogenic. So she always comes off kind of looking, I'm sorry, trouble, I know. But anyway, that's my little black dog. And so not nearly the size. She only weighs 4 pounds. So,
Wow.
well, she's a puppy. They're supposed to get up to maybe 12 pounds. But she's always gonna, and we have a Shiba Inu, an older dog who weighs, we always thought she was small, and she weighs over 20 pounds. And next to these little guys, she's a giant. It's like watching, something coming up to an elephant. And so the older dog, they're so little, she just doesn't want anything to do with them. She, she kind of swats them away as though they were a bee buzzing around her feet. And I'll be interested to see how she does when they get to be a little bit bigger.
Congratulations.
Well, thank you. It's really been a lot of fun. I think this is my husband's reaction to the second pandemic, kind of semi-lockdown, is that he'd had enough of just living with me. Decided to expand our household. Plus, we did have an older dog that we lost at 15 last spring, and we felt like the 7-year-old dog, really, who'd always had a playmate, was really getting lonely.
Would like some company.
Yeah, and I think, to be fair, we were looking for a larger dog, but we were lost when these two showed up. So the
it was
7-year-old,
fate. It was fate. It was meant to be.
It was, yeah. So the 7-year-old's just going to have to be patient here for a few months till they get up to a decent size. But I think she'll be fine. Anyway, Patrick, are there questions that people would like? Unfortunately, the really sad thing about this book, if there is a sad thing, is we can't really talk about it, because almost everything we say is going to be a giant spoiler. We can tell you they drove up from London. He's a screenwriter. She works in an animal shelter. They're not terribly well. We're not sure the state of their marriage, which has gone on. There are letters that appear. They're in an isolated place, and we're pretty sure that this weekend away is going to be a pivotal test of their marriage. But I don't think anyone could really anticipate, till you read the whole book, exactly how pivotal the entire thing is.
There's the black dog.
There's the black dog.
Wonderful.
I also have a black lab.
The best,
yeah.
the best.
Yeah.
So it's black dog. Black dog has a bad rap, because usually black dog is, goes with depression or something. They talk about the black dog of depression. And here, I have this little bundle of joy as a black dog, and yours are obviously are not.
I think it's the opposite. I think I know they have that reputation, but I think somewhere it got a bit mixed up or muddled along the way. I think they're the cure for depression. I'm kind of very much owned by my dog. I don't really go anywhere or do anything without him. He's even in the books now.
Yep.
Let's see. I do have some questions. Jane would like you to hold up that wonderful gift with the copper pennies,
with the
because there was
coins.
apparently a glare.
Let me try again. Hold on.
Oh yeah.
There, that's good. Right.
Yeah, you
great.
See. Okay.
That's great. Some people are weighing in about Inspector Morse's first name. I don't know if you...
Endeavor. I remembered it. Just triggered it right off. Endeavor. That was it, right?
Yeah.
And I've always, it wasn't clear to me that, it might have just been a device by Colin Dexter. It might have been that he imagined that Morse was kind of embarrassed by having a name like Endeavor, which really is one of those Puritan names, isn't it? Like Patience and,
Maybe. I think it's a great name.
Well, I do too, but I do think that it very much falls into those names that seem to develop from characteristics that the Puritans were particularly fond of, maybe the Quakers too.
Chastity and so forth.
Yeah.
I wonder if there are any little endeavors that have come up as a result of
from Morse fans.
Yeah. Let's see here. What else we have here? Okay, yeah, Anne asks, any idea how closely the film productions are sticking to your stories? Do you have any input into the scripts?
Ooh, very good question, Anne. Thank you for that one. I'm a little bit more involved with this adaptation than I have been in the past, because I love this team to bits. It's the first time I've been able to meet the team who are adapting a novel of mine, because normally it's going to be set in America, and this time it's going to be set in the UK, and it's going to be filmed in Scotland. And there are lots of little secrets that I'm not allowed to share yet, even though I really would like to, because it's all very exciting. But all I will say is I'm thrilled to bits, and all the decisions that they've made and all the things they've got planned and all the people they are involving in the project, I couldn't have wished for better, and the book couldn't be in safer hands. So I'm very excited. It's moving quite quickly, and yeah, I hope that one day not too far from now we'll be able to see Adam and Amelia on screen.
Wonderful.
Very cool. Stacy asked, she says, one of my favorite questions asked to an author is, what are they reading? Would Alice like to answer that? No pressure.
No, that's fine. I get asked this a lot, and I'm glad that you did. I have to recommend this book. Can you see it? Am I doing it okay?
Alice, that is genius, because do you know what? We're going to be speaking to her in an hour and 12 minutes.
Today?
Today.
I'm speaking to Catherine today.
We are.
That's crazy. I didn't know that, but I still would have recommended this book because this is the book that I have most recently read, and I loved it to bits. I hope people will love it as much as I do over there, but I know that some people might think a thriller about the pandemic, is it too soon for that? Maybe, but not if you read this book. This is just so brilliantly done. It's such a page turner, and it's so clever. So
it's not about the pandemic.
Have you spoken to Catherine before?
Yes, we did actually.
There we go.
We did the US launch for 56 days. When was it, Patrick? Like a month ago?
6 days ago. No.
Right. And I asked her because I thought she was lovely, and we hadn't met her previously. There's an author called Derva. I can't do the Irish, but I'm going to call her Derva McTiernan, who writes about Galway. And we are doing an event with her and Catherine at 2. Now, here's the challenge, Alice, that I was mentioning to you. Derva, who's Irish and writes about Galway, lives in Perth, Australia, where it's already Friday. Catherine Ryan Howard lives in Dublin, where it's still Thursday, but in the evening. And we are in Scottsdale in the middle. So in order to bring this one off, Catherine is signing in an hour and whatever it is at 10 p.m. from Dublin.
Yes.
Patrick and I will be back after a short break at 2 p.m. here in Scottsdale. Dervla, it's already Friday, will be getting up at 5 a.m. and she'll be joining us from tomorrow. And, you know,
Wow.
it's so interesting to put one
That's
of
like crazy time travel in a bookish event. I almost think I should write a book about this. That's crazy.
You know, that's one of the things that Zoom has allowed us to do, because in real life, the chances that we would have gotten an author here from Perth and an author here from Dublin at the same time on a, random day is very unlikely. And we had the same conversation last night with Harlan Coben and Mike Lupica. What were the odds that we would get the both of them to the store at the same time? And I do think that Zoom is almost like a magic carpet.
It's been great in that way. I think all kinds of things that just simply wouldn't have been possible before. And with America, I was lucky enough to come over and meet booksellers in person a couple of years ago. But as you mentioned, it's so much bigger than the UK. So you can only physically get to a certain number of stores and meet with a certain number of people. Whereas thanks to the magic of the internet, I can dot around and be in one part of America today and another part tomorrow. And I think there have been some ways in which it's been such a wonderful opportunity for authors and hopefully for readers too, to get to interact with each other in a way that simply wasn't possible before.
Well, I agree. And back to 56 days, it's not a pandemic novel. The story could only happen if a pandemic and a lockdown occurred. But what happens in the story after that has absolutely nothing to do with the pandemic or the lockdown. And I think in a way it's too bad to call it a pandemic novel, because basically the pandemic is really just a device, to make the story work. And I hope it doesn't put people off, because it's a really brilliant book. I
I'm jealous
loved
that
it.
you get to chat to Catherine. We've never met yet, but I am determined to meet her at some point in the future.
Well, I'll send you the link. If you don't want to stay up that late, you can tune back in and watch it tonight, or I'll send you a link because it'll stay up on our Facebook page and you can watch it. And I can send you the link for the earlier conversation that we had with
Fabulous.
her. She's really lovely. You'll be very pleased with her.
We can have Alice pop in and say hi. That might be a little bit too complicated, but
I'll be in bed by then.
oh, that's true. It's pretty late there, isn't it?
Well, it'll be 10 for Alice, just like it'll be 10 for Catherine. It's on British time, but nevertheless, but we can always do a conversation later, you know.
Certainly
with the two of you.
pass on your regards, though.
Yes,
Yeah,
please
we
do.
will do that. Anything else there, Patrick?
Yeah, let's see. Vicky just sent in a little, not a question. She just said that she's listening to your new book now and she really loves it. How do you like the audiobook version of this book and your books in general?
I love the audiobook versions. I get quite involved with the audiobooks. It's one of my favorite parts of the process. I remember the first year when we were recording Sometimes I Lie. I arrived at the studio. I like to be there for every minute of it. It's so exciting. And the narrator, I've had the same female narrator for all of my books, Stephanie Rissing. She's a terrific actor and absolutely amazing, and somehow just becomes each one of these characters. And I remember when I met Stephanie, I just thought, I don't think you can be Amber Reynolds, who is my main character in the first book. And I didn't say that, but I just thought, how is this going to work? And then as soon as we started recording, she was Amber, and I got goosebumps. And I remember crying a little bit because I thought, oh my God, Amber Reynolds is in the room. It was a very surreal experience for me as the author that she just became the character. She sounded so much like her. So Stephanie has narrated all four. I love Stephanie. And for the last two, because there have been multiple narrators, I've had Richard Armitage play the male leads, and he's fantastic too. And this year, sadly, because of the pandemic, I couldn't go to the studio. So we had to do everything in a very safe way. But I was on Zoom, again, thanks to all this wonderful technology. So I could listen into the whole thing being recorded. And because of the way it works with books, you hand them in and it's normally quite far in advance. It can be a year, 2 years sometimes, from the time where you hand it in as an author to the time when it gets published. So when we started recording the audiobook, I was almost finished on a completely different novel. So I hadn't looked at Rock, Paper, Scissors for a while. And when Richard started recording and he became Adam in Rock, Paper, Scissors, again, I got goosebumps, but in a slightly terrifying way. He has this wonderful voice. And as he started recording the story, I was genuinely terrified. And I was sitting at home with the dog, listening to them record it live. And I thought, this is bonkers. I'm scared of my own story and I wrote it and I know what's going to happen, but it was a really frightening experience. So thank you very much for listening to the audiobook. I'm sorry if anyone gets scared or has nightmares, because I did. But the actors involved did the most wonderful job, and they made it all sound terrific. So I'm very grateful.
Well, it looks like that's just about it for actual questions. Barbara?
All right. Well, Alice, once again, it's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you. I'm gathering, that was going to be my final question, that you are at work on book 5, or possibly you've even finished book 5.
Yeah, we've just sort of done final edits on book 5, and I'm so excited for that one too. Book 5, I'm not allowed to talk about a lot of things yet, but I will say it took me 5 years. 5 years from the moment I had the idea to when I handed it in, which is the longest it's taken me to write anything ever. So it was a real labor of love, but I'm very proud of it. It's another dark and twisty novel, but it is a little bit different to my others. So I hope readers who've enjoyed them so far.
It sounds as though in your creative process, thinking about it takes actually longer than writing about it. Is that generally true for you?
Yeah, that's massively true for me. And I know there are some very clever authors who just sit and write and make things up as they go along. But I know I tend to think for years in some cases, and I won't write a word until I know it all in my head, until I know the characters just as well as I might know friends or family, and I know everything about them, and I know everything about the story, and I know the twist, and I know how I want to tell it. So that helps me. Knowing everything so well by then helps me to leave those breadcrumbs behind for people to find and leave the clues behind. So a lot of thinking,
Do you write a detailed outline?
Yes, I write in my garden shed, and anyone who goes in there, which is no one actually, I don't know anyone except the husband and the dog in there these days. It looks like a crazy lady's lair. There are these different colored cards everywhere, and I have to see the whole book. It sounds peculiar, but I have to be able to see the whole book in one space. I have to be able to see every chapter, and there are different colored cards for different characters or different timelines. And so only when I've got all of that together and I can see the whole plan, and sometimes the plan might change a little bit, but for me, it's like going on a walk with the dog. If I didn't know where I was going or I didn't have a map, I would spend the whole time panicking about getting lost instead of enjoying the walk. And it's the same for me with the writing. I want to enjoy writing the story, so I have to know where I'm going before I begin.
Sounds like a homicide detective's office.
Yeah, that's what it looks like. So that's why I can't let anybody else in there.
This is hilarious. You are the third British author that I have talked to whose office is indeed their garden shed. And our conversation, Ellie Griffith, actually, we do our conversations in her garden shed. So we're obviously missing something out here in the States. I'm not sure we have garden sheds. Do we have garden sheds, Patrick? We must.
Not so much. I'm trying to think. No, not really.
Where do you keep your lawnmowers?
Well, I guess we do, but
mostly in our garages. We have attached garages this is out in the West. Back East, I'm pretty sure that the cars and the tools all sort of reside in a, as you would say, garage, we would say garage.
Then it might be to do with how old some of our houses are, because I used to live in a little Victorian house, two down, and there's no garage, there's no anything, there's not even parking. You have to park on the street. Right. So we have to have a shed. That's where you put all your stuff. Or in my case, that's where you put all your crazy planning cards and have your little writing.
Oh, it certainly works out well for you authors, to have a place to go retreat. I love the idea. Where are you writing? In my shed. And, we've talked to authors who write in coffee shops and all over the place. Who was it that used to write in a fast food restaurant? And he was sort of famous for, it was like his local Hardee's, which is a sort of version of McDonald's or something. And Ken Kruger, who writes his wonderful books in a coffee shop in the Twin Cities in Minnesota, and he can't write comfortably.
I could never do that. I have to have complete silence. Even if the dog is snoring too loudly, I have to adjust him a little bit. So no, these writers who write in loud, noisy places, they're like an alien species to me. I have to have quiet.
Both last night, both Harlan Coben and Mike Lupica both write on legal pads in longhand, which is interesting.
Yeah, but as Harlan says, what happens then is that when he inputs it into a laptop, it's already a second draft. And so maybe in a way it's really efficient. I had that conversation at dinner years ago with P.D. James. She wrote all of her books out in longhand, and at one point she finally hired somebody, I think, to do the typing. She did some of it herself, but everybody has a different way of writing. And as I said earlier, it's just not transferable, much as any wannabe writer might wish it were. It isn't. So it's fun to talk to different writers about their journey and their process and how books come into being. So thank you, Alice, for sharing all that with us. What an absolute treat to see you again.
Thank you so much for having me. I enjoyed it so much. And I can't believe how quickly the time has gone because we're having so much fun.
I know we do. And don't forget, we have these fabulous book plates and wonderful illustrations in the copy. So don't forget to order one. Plus, it's an amazing read. Unfortunately, we can't tell you any more about it than we did without reading it. But next year, when we talk to Alice, we can go back and talk about how this book played out.
I can't wait for you to read next year's book. I'm going to make sure you get an early copy of that one, and then we can.
Or send me a PDF. I already know how to do that.
I'm going to make sure that if there are illustrations, you get something with
Got it. Well, it'll be fine. But I'm glad you mentioned them because I really would have been sad to miss them or not mention it. So, so you've already heard Alice recommend Catherine Ryan Howard's book, and I like Dervlis. So if you don't have anything else to do, come back in 58 minutes and we'll talk to them, or you can watch it later. Alice's video will live on our Facebook page, and the podcast, which will probably be available tomorrow, will be up forever. We're up to 113,204 podcast downloads.
Wow, that's amazing. That's brilliant.
Well, you mentioned audiobooks and how well they've done. And so really, it's not surprising that many people would rather listen to us talk now watch us talk.
But we look so fabulous.
Well, I mean, and they can't see the dog, but aside from that, I do think that, again, that's technology that, you know, makes it possible to reach a larger number of readers than.
I think any way that gets people reading more books, any books written by anyone is always a fantastic thing. So
Well,
it's
story,
brilliant.
and whether you watch it on television or you listen to it or whether you read it, you know, story is story, and it's a wonderful thing. So goodbye, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. Bye, Alice.
Thank
Night,
you.
Alice.
Care.
Get a good
Bye-bye.
night's sleep. Bye.
Bye-bye.